Most traders open the order flow software and they have no idea what they are looking at. It's just numbers flying everywhere, it's matrix, they can't really make a head or tail of it. But in this video we'll break everything down and I'll show you the most important things that you need to know when reading the order flow. So we'll talk about volume clusters, high volume nodes, imbalances, delta, cumulative delta, and so on. And in the end, I'll also show you how to organize everything together to create your own order flow workspace. Alright? So let's get to it. The first thing, and maybe the most important thing, are volume clusters. Volume cluster is a place where heavy volumes were traded. It's important because big trading institutions usually reveal their trading activity in those volume clusters. On the screen, there are two significant volume clusters here. It is this one and this one. When you see a volume cluster, it's usually a sign that somebody big was trading there, probably some trading institution. The reason why those are important is that first, there are footprints of somebody big, and second, price likes to react to heavy volumes. So for example, if you take a look at this volume cluster, the price moves away from it and makes a pullback, and when it goes back to the area where this volume cluster was formed, price reacts there. So it worked as a support, right? Heavy volumes often work as strong supports and resistances. So that's why the volume clusters are important. They show significant support and resistances and activity of the big guys. Now, I actually like to look for the volume clusters on this type of chart. It is a footprint chart which shows total volumes, which means bid plus ask, right? So the previous chart was showing bid and ask, but this one is showing the total bid plus ask. For me, it's easier to read and easier to spot those heavy volume zones, right? This is the first one I was showing you. This is the second I was showing you. They simply stand out more visually. It's easier to me to read the chart. So that's why I use this kind of chart to look for those volume clusters. If you look at this example, then we have a rather significant volume cluster right here. What it could represent here is that when the price was dropping and reached this place, maybe there was some support here, somebody big started to trade here. Heavy volumes were traded, and eventually this resulted in change of a trend. It all happened around this significant volume cluster right here. Again, I can show you this on that volume chart. In my opinion, it's just better visible there, right? This is that volume cluster that changed the direction of the trend. Now, speaking of the importance of heavy volumes, I also need to mention high volume nodes. There's a high volume node in every footprint. My software does a black bracket around that high volume node, and it's the place where the heaviest volumes were traded in each footprint, right? So in each footprint there is a high volume node, and it shows where the heaviest volumes were traded in that particular footprint. I'm not saying that you need to trade every high volume node that you can see on your chart, but it's usually handy to know where the heaviest volumes were traded in each footprint, right? Especially if you have, for example, those high volume nodes next to each other, like in here. My software highlights that in yellow, and it represents support or resistance. So, for example, in here there was a pullback to this double high volume node, and the price reacted there, right? So you want to keep track of the high volume nodes as well, because as I was saying, and I'll probably say it many times in this webinar, heavy volumes are important. Always keep track of heavy volumes. Now, another very important thing here is delta. Very simply put, delta is difference between buyers and sellers and shows who is stronger, whether buyers or sellers. If delta is positive, like for example in here, in this footprint, that means that buyers were in control in this footprint. If delta is negative, like in here, then in this footprint, it means that sellers were in control, right? Delta is ask, that's the sum of those volumes, minus bid. That's the sum of those volumes. And my software prints the delta below each footprint. So in each footprint you can tell who was in control, buyers or sellers. Now, needless to say, we have the limit orders which can mess things up. They mess delta up. So it's not the holy grail of all indicators. Otherwise it would probably be, but it's not, because we have the limit orders which could mess things up. But still, I consider delta a very, very powerful tool, and I always keep track of it. Now, speaking of delta, I also like to use the cumulative delta, which is nothing else than how the delta was developing since the start of the day, right? So if you look at this picture here, then there's a summary right here at the bottom of the screen, and in here it shows the cumulative delta. So the first footprint of the day was delta minus 62. It shows in here, but it's not really visible, it's hidden behind this. Anyways, the next delta is minus 10. So minus 62 minus 10 is minus 72, right? That's the cumulative delta, minus 72. It shows how delta was developing since the start of a day. The next delta is positive, it is 12. So minus 72 plus 12, that's 60, right? Now, I must say this is quite challenging to keep track of if it's just, numbers at the bottom of the screen. That's why I use this chart. It's also cumulative delta, but in this case, it is a simple line chart. It shows the same thing, how the delta was developing since the start of a day. If you look at it like this, it's way easier to read, right? One simple look and you know that cumulative delta is dropping and that sellers are in control. Very, very simple and very, very effective. I really like to use the cumulative delta. I'll show you how later. By the way, my software also gives you the option to use this line chart of cumulative delta rather than just, the summary at the bottom, like in here, right? So if you get my software, you'll get this one as well. Very, very handy feature. Now, another thing that's very, very important to keep track of are imbalances. An imbalance is when one side of the market is way stronger than the other. For example, buyers were way stronger than sellers, or sellers way stronger than buyers. The definition of way stronger is 3 times or more, right? So take a look, for example, at this footprint and take a look at this number here, 313. It's highlighted in blue. That means that it is imbalanced, right? My software highlights those so I can spot them easily. And you always compare diagonally. That's how you read order flow, like this. So you compare 313 to 96. If 313 is 3 times or more bigger than 96, which it is, then it gets highlighted in blue and it shows imbalance. Sellers were way more aggressive than buyers in here. If we look further in the chart, we have imbalance in here, then imbalance in here. Those are selling imbalances because they are at bid. But there's, for example, buying imbalance right here. It shows at ask. That means that buyers were in control here because we are comparing 35 contracts and 108 contracts, right? So that's why it gets highlighted in blue, because in here buyers were more aggressive. The way I use those imbalances is I often look for stacked imbalances. And stacked imbalance is where more imbalances are stacked at top of each other. Like in this footprint, you see all those blue numbers, those are imbalances. if they are at top of each other, then they are stacked imbalances, and they often represent a strong support or resistance zone, right? Because this is a place where sellers, in this case sellers, were way more aggressive than buyers. What my software does is it highlights those areas. So for example, in here we have stacked buying imbalance, and it gets highlighted like this and represents strong support. So if there's a pullback, the price is likely to react there, right? This is how I like to trade the imbalances. I mean the stacked imbalances. So remember, imbalance or stacked imbalance shows aggression and strength of either buyers or sellers. Now, as I was saying, it is very important to keep track of what the big picture is. And for that, I like to use volume profile. Volume profile is that thing on the left side of the screen, this histogram right here. And it is a daily profile which shows how volumes were distributed through the whole day. One quick look and you know that there is a significant volume zone in here, another significant volume zone in here, light volumes in here, light volumes in here. And this gives you the big picture, right? Which is so important when trading with order flow. I know that order flow is all about, the details, but it only works if you know what's going on the bigger picture. That's why volume profile is that important, and that's why it's also part of my order flow software. Now, what I like to do now is do a little summary of the things that I showed you. There are a couple of them, so right now you can see all of them on one screen. And basically, if you open an order flow chart, like for example this one, those are the things that you should focus on and you should always keep in mind. So you should keep track of the volume profile, where the heaviest volumes are, and what the important areas in the chart are. You should also keep track of the heavy volume clusters. Also, you should look for high volume nodes like this one, this one, this one. Then you should look for stacked imbalances like those or those. You definitely want to look for multiple high volume nodes like this one, or this one. You should keep track of delta below each footprint and also cumulative delta. Right? So if you open up an order flow chart, those should be the things that stand out. Don't try to read every single number that you see on your screen. That's no help. You'll just get lost in that matrix. Just read those things and the order flow will start to make sense, right? It won't be complex. You just need to know what to look for, right? And those are the most important things to look for. Now at this point, I like to show you my workspace. You can copy it, you can let it inspire you, and here is how it looks. Right here, on the top left, there's a chart which is a 30-minute chart, and it shows the total volumes. So it's not a bid and ask chart, only total volumes. On this chart, I sort of look at the bigger picture, right? Because it is a 30-minute chart. I look for the significant volume clusters, like for example this one. I look at the volume profile, and as I was saying, this is the bigger picture. Another chart which shows the bigger picture is this one. It is something that I call trades filter. It only shows single trades that were bigger than X amount of contracts. So it filters out all the noise and shows only the big orders. For example here, one order of 182 contracts. As you can see in this case, this actually turned the trend from downtrend to uptrend, right? So this is the trades filter. A very useful feature. It also gives me sort of a bigger picture. Then on the right side of the screen, there's this chart, and this one gives me more detailed look because this is bid and ask chart. It is 5-minute chart, and I use this one to look for the order flow setups, to look for confirmation setups, to look for nuances. I also use this one to look at deltas and all the stuff which I'm going to show you today regarding, let's say, trade confirmations or other order flow setups. So this is the detailed look into bid and ask. And the last chart, this one, it's a combination of two charts. The first one is a 1 minute chart of price, and below that, 1 minute chart of cumulative delta. I compare those and I look for divergences there. So this is how the order flow workspace looks like. And in order not to lose the big picture, I also have a volume profile chart with simple candles. I have that on my other screen. It looks like this. And I have volume profile here, which is a weekly volume profile. Then there's a volume profile which I can move around like this. That's flexible profile. I also have a weekly VWAP here. By the way, this is a 30-minute chart. So this is the big picture. I look for my levels here at first, and then I trade those levels with order flow. So that's about the workspace. By the way, if you guys would like to join our trading community, you get access to all those order flow indicators, to the volume profile indicators. We'll also install everything for you, set everything up. The workspace is the data, the platform, everything. If you want to join us, then head over to my website. It is traderdale.com. If you click trading course and tools, then it'll take you to this page. And here you can browse my education and indicator packs. This is the order flow pack, which includes a 12-hour course on order flow trading, my order flow software, and also my volume profile software. Also tech support, which will install everything for you. There are also other packs which you can get here, the volume profile pack, the VWAP pack, smart money pack. You can get them separately in here, or scroll down a bit, you can get them for a discounted price in here, all four together.